What's up, Juha? How you doing?
Hey Joe. Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Good, you're good, man. You're good. So, last time I saw you, we were strolling around Austin, Texas, I think it was. So,
I was, and we were eating very good barbecue.
yeah, we were. Yeah. And I think there was an incident with a television set or something like that that you had. So,
Oh yeah. The Ellie team had a TV set there that they had to buy because they couldn't rent one, and then we had to sell it after the event. And now the event we're talking about, of course, is Data Day Texas in
yeah.
January. It was right. So they had to sell it after the event. So it was a very interesting episode.
Yeah, I think you gave it away to somebody.
Yeah, eventually we ended up giving it away because no one wanted to buy it, and it was too expensive to actually mail it to the next place where they had an event. So we just gave it away for free. Free
That's
TVs
awesome.
for everyone.
Free TVs for everyone. Welcome to America.
Yeah,
Cool. Yeah, that was like the last funny moment that last funny memory I had of you. So it's pretty
yeah.
hilarious. Um, awesome. For people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
Sure thing. Juha Korpela, I call in from Helsinki, Finland. And, well, nowadays I'm an independent consultant. Have been doing that since the beginning of 24. But I used to work at Ellie Technologies, which is kind of the context through which we originally, I think, got into touch, Joe.
Hmm.
And I've been doing data modeling and sort of data products and information architecture and that sort of stuff now for, well, a few years already, and
Nice.
been doing talks and presentations and writing and stuff like that, especially on data modeling. So that's kind of also kind of connection between us.
Yeah. I think we got connected. I'd heard your name floating about a bit before. Like John Giles, I think, had mentioned you,
Oh yeah, that
and
could
a
be.
few other
Yeah.
people like that.
John's an
Yeah,
old friend.
yeah, he's a good dude. And
Oh,
then,
he's great.
yeah, we did a podcast over at the LA office. I can't remember if you were there or not, but then we met up
November,
and
I think it was. Yeah.
yeah, November. Yeah, so yeah, your name keeps popping up in the data modeling world. So I guess you're uh, you know, legitimized and famous
Thank you.
in that circle. So yeah, it's awesome. You're well respected. Yeah, what's in your mind with data modeling? I know that at least as far as I know, your name is really tied to conceptual data modeling.
Right.
Is that a fair description? And if it isn't, what else do you do?
Well, yeah, yeah. Well, I think it is a fair description. Yeah. I mean, what I've been doing in the field of data modeling, like I haven't written books or anything like academic or anything like that. But what I've been doing is I've been making, let's say, quite a lot of noise about conceptual modeling, especially. And the thing is, and we both discuss this all the time, in LinkedIn and everywhere, that data modeling is kind of a lost art, right? And there's so much that has been forgotten, things that we knew how to do before, but nowadays isn't done anymore. And, the results of that are, lots of noise, lots of output, very little outcome. And I listened to your podcast actually about the value of data teams just a couple of days ago. Quite
Mm,
interesting, and I kind of think that is also connected. So my thesis has been for a while now that one of the reasons for that lack of value, for that kind of noise and very little signal, is that we don't really understand what we are kind of doing. We don't understand the business that we are supposed to be serving in data, and why that is related to conceptual modeling and data modeling overall is that I find that doing data modeling is a way to understand what the business is actually about, and it is a way to translate the world of that business, the actual world where the actual money moves around, to translate that into something that we can work on as data people. And the conceptual data model is like the step one. And we get that wrong all the time, or we don't take that step. So whatever we do after that is kind of pointless because we already went wrong in the first place. So I've been kind of trying to make
hmm.
noise around that. I think it's actually quite easy and straightforward and kind of very fast and efficient way of figuring out things. And that's why I originally joined Ellie Technologies. What was it,
Yeah.
4 years ago, something like that? Because Ellie is a great. I don't want to shield too much, but it's a tool that was originally meant for precisely to make conceptual data modeling easy to understand
Oh
what the
yeah.
business is about. So
Hmm.
that's been the thing, and that's the noise I've been trying to make, and so I have been very very happy to see you also talking about data modeling and talking about all the levels of data modeling, not just doing physical data models and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and Ellie's I think synonymous with the conceptual data modeling. It was interesting talking to the Ellie team because I think conceptual modeling is one of these things where if you try and sell it as a conceptual modeling product, for example, people sort of look at you like you've got three heads growing out of you, and because it's a lost art, I think the notion of conceptual modeling is sort of it's one of the things I think we do it implicitly. We do conceptual modeling, whether you think about it or not, whether you intend to, right? Every time you think about, the quote the business and how you're going to translate whatever you're looking at in the business down to whatever you're going to put in a database. I mean, that is a form of conceptual modeling. It's not official though, and I think it's one of those things that's not really taught anymore. Not that I'm not really sure it was ever taught to begin with. Maybe in certain circles. So, but
I'm not sure.
It definitely feels like it's what. Yeah, right. But it's definitely one of those things where it's sort of prerequisite to making the rest of data modeling work. And like you, like I didn't expect to find myself attached to the data modeling world. And in fact, I probably did everything in my power not to be. But I think it was such a huge and underserved area where I kept noticing over and over the problems that I kept seeing with data teams were probably a direct result of really bad data modeling. And so you can either help, I guess, with solving the problem or just ignore it. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of, there's nothing new in that. It's something that we used to know how to do. And if you talk to the grand old men of data modeling, you mentioned John Giles already, like his book on Data Vault, the what's the elephant again? Elephant in the fridge.
It's right, yeah.
Yeah,
the Nimble Elephant as well.
Yeah, Nimble Elephant also. I have both, and they're great books, and they say basically there right in the beginning that hey, first thing before you even go into Data Vault or anything, you just figure out what your business concepts are. And John keeps talking about kind of a data town plan. Just figure out what's the overall lay of the land. What do you have data about? And I was originally kind of converted by Alex Sharp, who I also got in touch with you. So Alec trained me might have been a decade already, but he trained me to do proper conceptual modeling, like actually figuring out what things we have data about. Who cares about tables and so on? Initially, we have to find out what things we have data about. That's like step one.
Yeah.
And after that, we try to figure out how do we structure those things and the data about those things. That might be data vault or one big table, whatever that might be, and then you create your tables. But if you don't start with figuring out what the things actually are that we are interested in, then that's all kind of useless.
But that's where a lot of teams seem to start these days. A lot of data practitioners seem to start and end with you mentioned one big table, or I think the data vault crowd, they tend to be, I think, a lot more thoughtful, just because there's a lot more nuance to data vault. So you kind of have to, in order to make satellites, for example, you kind of have to think a bit harder about your data versus just throwing it all into one giant table. So I think there's a bit more rigor to that. But it seems like with the modern crop of maybe modern data stack practitioners, especially, it's there's two frameworks I see being used. It's the one big table where people are just like, just dump it into one table because joins are bad. So we can't do joins, right? Even though I think that's kind of been taken care of with a lot of the data platforms. And then the other one would be Kimball, right? So I think the big book that was always prescribed to analytical and data engineers was Kimball's book, until mine came along. And then but I thought that was interesting just because there wasn't really a rhyme or reason to it. It's just like, just learn Kimball and then you'll do great things with data. And I was like, well, that seems to miss a lot of the thinking that goes behind it.
Exactly, and like Kimball, also with Data Vault, and I have to preface this by saying that I actually like Data Vault as an approach. I think it's a good approach, and we both know a lot of Data Vault people like Kent and Veronica and those folks, and they're great, and I like them.
Well, your city is like one of the epicenters of Data Vault.
Oh yeah, true. Lots of Data Vault people in Helsinki. But tons. I mean, with Data Vault and with Kimball and no, well, I mean, one big table is such a simple idea, but there's kind of like cargo cult around it occasionally. That you kind of, think that, okay, if I rename my tables as dimensions and facts or hubs and links and satellites, then suddenly, I'm doing data modeling and everything will be, fine and dandy. But even with, something as kind of well organized and well trained and everything as data vault, and where everything is kind of set in stone, this is how you do it. Everyone should know exactly how it works. If you don't start with figuring out what your actual business objects are, like I have customers, products, and orders, that's not going to be what you have in your source systems, right? Your source system will have, whatever weird tables about events and so on and so forth. And if you just blindly kind of turn those into your, rename those as hubs and satellites and links or whatever, that's never going to work. And I think even with Data Vault, even as much as I support it, like, I don't know, anecdotally, 70% of implementations are just, replicating source system tables, but you're just renaming them. And that isn't doing the trick. That's absolutely not doing the trick. And that's why I keep banging on about conceptual modeling, because you just have to take that first step.
Well, where do you think conceptual modeling fits in even more upstream with application databases?
Oh, yeah. That's actually a very good point, and related to what I do a lot nowadays. For example, I work with one organization who have a very strong kind of domain-oriented focus, like throughout everything. It goes into operational applications, it goes into data pipelines and data platforms and so on and so forth. And what the model there is, you have your entities in the domain, you have in logistics, you have a delivery and truck and whatever you might have. Those same entities kind of exist in the exact similar way in your operational systems and your analytical systems and in your reports and everywhere. So the data model, kind of the conceptual core data model, sits on top of everything in there. And that's kind of, I think, what it sort of should be. I mean, in any case, the business is about the same things. It doesn't change when we move from operational stuff into analytics. It's still about the same things.
Yeah, it is. But I feel like conceptual modeling and data modeling has, at least from my observations, been a lot more focused on the analytical realm.
Yep.
And you're absolutely right. The conceptual model is a conceptual model, right? A customer is a customer. It shouldn't change from the application to how you analyze it. I would hope not. That would be very odd, but I'm sure it happens a lot, actually. But even, I know it's even software developers, though, right? I mean, it's almost worse there than it is in analytics because, I mean, I think maybe if you're in a CS class, you might learn about, say, relational data modeling, for example, right? But even then, you're not exposed to ideas of conceptual, logical, and physical. It's just here's third normal form, here's maybe voice cod normal form. Have a nice day. You'll forget about it in about 3 weeks.
Exactly. It's like you're given the kind of very fancy, very precise tools to do specific things, but you're never actually being told what to do with those tools. You're just given, here's your, power tool for, drilling something or whatever. And then you're saying, okay, I'll go drill some holes. But you're never being told, what sorts of holes you should drill and why. That's kind of,
or how to measure between holes, even.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But I think I'm kind of maybe an idealistic relating to what sort of data modeling could do and what it could be. But I sort of see, like, the whole idea of data mesh and everything, that beyond that there should be kind of a general understanding of the overall sort of information landscape of the organization, the whole enterprise in a way. What John keeps talking about, he says data town plan. What sorts of things do we have data about in general? And then based on that, you have different sorts of operational applications that do something with that data. You have processes that do something with that data. You have your analytical solutions, you have your pipelines, you have your one big table solutions, ML models, whatever. But they all are kind of connected into that overarching model of, what the enterprise really is about. And I don't know what happened with enterprise architecture, because I don't know if enterprise architecture as a discipline even exists in the States that much as it does in Europe. But, it used to be so, I think, at least in theory, that enterprise architecture was kind of about three things. It was about systems architecture, it was about kind of the business architecture, the capabilities and processes, and it was about information architecture. And nowadays what I see is that enterprise architecture equals systems architecture, and somehow we kind of forgot those two other parts from there as well. And I think that's kind of also sort of maybe even reason for some of this, why data modeling has gone away from these practical projects that not even the enterprise architects are worried about data models and entities and so on and so forth anymore.
Oh, that's spot on. Yeah, I mean, I kind of jokingly created a variant of Conway's law called Reese's law. It was a joke actually, but basically, you'll design data models according to the architecture of your company.
Yep.
At the end of the day, that's inevitably what happens. And so the data model, even if you have a nice conceptual model, eventually you'll try and shoehorn it into whatever system that you're using, and that's just the reality of it. And then that inevitably starts straying from, even if you had a conceptual model or if you don't, that inevitably starts straying from the business because data just has entropy, so to speak. It just drifts inevitably away if you're not keeping track of it, and that system just goes off and, I don't know, does its thing, and that's what happens in a lot of companies.
Yeah, but that's also kind of brings to my mind a very kind of important lesson that once again came up actually today. I was talking to a colleague of mine, very good data modeler working at an organization here in Helsinki, and we were talking about, we had some workshops with the actual business, people from sales and marketing and so on and so forth, and we were discussing with them about, the usual stuff, differences between a lead and prospect, and what is a contact and what is an actual person and so on and so forth, how these are connected, and we were doing data modeling basically, and they were super happy about the discussion. They were very interested in, they were very into it, very kind of engaged, saying that this is super cool stuff. Oh, this is very good that we are now discussing about this. It's very good that we're finding out how this actually works. We're getting some sort of unified view of how things are. This data model is very good for us. So that's coming from the business when we do that work at the conceptual level. If you take that conceptual model and you go to the IT team or the data team and you show them that, you say, hey, I would like to discuss about the differences between leads and prospects. They say, well, I don't, might be nice to have, but I have pipelines to build.
Yep.
So it's kind of weird.
How did you talk to the business, though? That's sorry to cut you off, but that's an interesting thing because you convinced the business that this model was important. How did you do that?
Yeah. That I think that's the kind of magic of conceptual models. It's about the things. As Alex says, it's like a thing model. So what things do you have in business? How are they connected? Forget about tables, forget about keys, forget about normalization. You don't even need to mention the word data or model. Just start talking about prospects and leads, and then we started discussing lead. It's actually like an event, right? So that a lead is created when someone contacts the company, says, hey, I would be interested in your products. So but then the same person contacts them again. That's another lead. So the lead cannot be a person or person's status. It's clearly an event. Very interesting, very interesting. And then we start talking about what is a customer. Can a customer create a lead? Okay, they are existing customer, they're interested in another product. Now there's a customer and a lead. Oh, that's very interesting. Suddenly we have three entities, a person, a lead, and a customer, how they are related, and then there's a product, and so on and so forth. And of course the business wants to talk about that. That's what they do. That's what they try to figure out. They try to optimize their processes and their revenue streams and everything, and try to avoid doing duplicate work in different departments and so on and so forth. Trying to figure out, who might be the, most valuable customers, what's the next best offer for them, and so on and so forth. And that discussion is actually conceptual data modeling. You're just kind of, creating the diagram as you go based on the narrative part of that discussion.
So how do you do that then? Are you sitting there with like a pen and some paper drawing this out, or do you have a tool that you do? Like how,
practically
for the audience, what's your process?
Today I was using Ellie actually.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. But
cool.
I mean pen and paper, and I keep quoting Alec because he's great, but he has this kind of method where he's basically just writing down every single noun that people use on a piece of paper, like a post-it note. They say customer, I write down customer. They say lead, I write down lead, and every single noun. And then he basically categorizes those. Which of these nouns are actually kind of things we have data about? Okay, customer, lead, and so on. Which are kind of sort of facts about things, customer ID, customer name. These are actually kind of attributes, but we don't have to worry about that. These are facts about things. And then, if people talk about other things like, some system or process or something, then we write those down as well, but they are not going to be things or facts about things, so we can forget them from the conceptual model. So you kind of just listen to people talk about their business, the actual business, and you pick the objects from there. It's not magic. It's actually just, writing down every single noun, and then you start building from there. That's what I've done most often, and
Yeah.
it works. And even the diagrams work. Some people say, that especially in IT, that you can't show data models to business, they won't understand it. Has boxes and lines and crow's feet notation. Oh no, very complicated. This is highly technical work. We have to do it. Architects need to do it. That's not true. I've never been in a meeting where the business representatives wouldn't have understood a conceptual model diagram. Of course, it has to be truly conceptual, truly business language. You can't have facts and dimensions and hubs and satellites that don't
Right.
belong in a conceptual model. But if you go at that level, they're very happy to participate, and they will actually draw it themselves after a few rounds.
Mm. That's a good exercise too. Have you ever started with having the business sort of draw out their maybe the business processes or workflows or
Yeah,
rules
yeah.
or anything?
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, I think the kind of business process data model connection is very much underappreciated. Malcolm Chisholm was
Mm.
writing about this the other day on LinkedIn, and Alex been talking about it, and so on and so forth. It's kind of also a place where we often start if you don't have any idea, how the business works. I mean, in most cases, I don't. I don't know anything about, I don't know, oil or you
Right.
know healthcare or anything before I suddenly walk into a meeting room full of people who know a lot of that stuff, and they might show me, how the process works. Raw materials come in from here via trucks, and then it's moved into this, processing unit here, and whatever comes out, that's the product. And they explain that, and that might be a process diagram actually showing that, but you can kind of see again the nouns there. Okay, product,
Yep.
truck, hey, processing unit, delivery. And again, you pick the elements of the conceptual model from there. Usually we don't
Yeah.
even look at systems. We don't talk about systems. We don't talk about any data flows, any databases, anything. We just talk about the
Yep.
business itself.
Mm-hmm. That's really what it is,
It is,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What's your thought on data model patterns? I know John Giles, he, especially in the Nimble Elephant, wrote a lot about patterns, and he's the one that actually turned me on to the whole 3 volume set of data model patterns. I think Lynn
Yeah, lens
Silverson wrote,
books
and then yeah, and there was another one. I think David Hayes wrote a separate book on it. But I mean, 4 great books, but I think have been lost to just the winds of time, so to speak. And I mentioned patterns in my talks, and people are like, "That's a thing." But what are your thoughts on these? I mean, do you think that showing patterns to people would help speed up the modeling process?
Possibly. I mean, I like patterns. But I see them more like as kind of tools or cheat codes for myself as a modeler. When I
Yeah.
encounter something, then I can pick the pattern and say, okay, let's try that one, and if it fits what they just told me. I don't often, or let's put it this way. I try to avoid kind of giving too much too early to the people who actually should be telling me how the thing works. So if I
Smart.
give them like a full model and say, hey, is your data model this? And people don't
Right.
really necessarily understand it, and they say, well, I don't know, well, looks good enough. It's better if they explain to me how it works, and then I can utilize the patterns as I kind of document what they are talking about. Which is also kind of something that has to do with sort of industry standard models. Because occasionally you run into organizations who are very eagerly using like this massive industry standard model, which is certified, and you have to buy it from Oracle or something, and you get a bunch of PDFs and or some sort of system where you can navigate through an industry standard model, which might be super good and actually might work, like properly it might work, but it still doesn't give you the little aha, the eureka moment when people are themselves figuring out how the business works. You might be able to use it as a basis, make the process faster, but it's not the same as figuring actually what the business really does in that particular organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's interesting too. I see people doing this with Kimball as well, because Kimball's book goes through sort of a progression of, I think, a retail example, then some other examples. But I've seen people kind of be, I think, too overly prescriptive up front and not listening, because every business has nuance to it that really can't be captured in a kind of a pre-existing model. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's good to have kind of helpers and sort of components that you can
Yeah,
reuse. That's obviously good, I think. But like if you're using, I don't know, ChatGPT to create a data model, I mean, yeah, you might get some kind of a starting point, but
yeah.
still there's something unique in that business. I mean, well, okay, almost every single custom master data model that I've ever created looks pretty much the same. I mean, independent of the industry or anything, but it's still something that kind of has to be built with those people so that you ensure. I mean, it's all about common understanding, right? We're trying to figure out kind
Yeah.
of common language. We're trying to build a bridge between the actual business people and the data people. That's what the models are. You do that. You start with the conceptual, so you get the business people involved. You do your logical modeling, you use whatever logical flavor you might need to actually do your thing. This is your mixed modeling arts that you keep talking about, which I think is a very good
Hmm.
concept for this. Whatever that might be, whatever flavor, whatever kind of shape it might be, vault, one bit table, whatever. And then you end up kind of getting closer and closer to the actual implementation and kind of to instructions on how to code basically. But it's a bridge that we're building, and we kind of have to build it from the all the way through.
Yeah. You mentioned ChatGPT. Something I've been
Yep.
thinking about a lot lately is, does any of this actually matter anymore? Any of this data modeling stuff, any of this hard thinking that we're beating our heads against the wall with. I mean, large language models and generative AI is getting pretty good. Um, was it GPT? OpenAI just they recently announced was it GPT 4.0 or whatever it was, kind of multimodal model. And it's pretty
Yep.
sick, actually. And this is sort of the way things are going. Who knows what GPT 5 is going to be like, but I think it's probably going to be pretty ridiculous. But that being said, I'm seeing a lot of data vendors and practitioners diving headfirst into large language models, and that's basically going to suck in the rest of the corpus of your data, whether that's an organization, whether that's emails, all your unstructured data sets, and your structured data sets. So it kind of got me wondering: does any of this actually matter anymore, right? Or will you just outsource it to a machine and let it tell you what to do?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. Have you seen like a few years ago at least? It was a big thing to have a kind of process mining tool. So you take a tool, you plug it into your ERP that kind of shows you a graph of how the transactions actually flow. So
Yep.
so you don't have to create kind of your process diagram by hand. You're kind of just plugging a tool in and it shows you how it actually works. So it's kind of pattern recognition from sort of ERP data. What the large language models or what let's put it this way, people who are using large language models in the context of data modeling, what they try to do is to catch these patterns from kind of unstructured data, from all those documents and emails and everything, kind of trying to capture what the business structure is from there. It's
Hmm.
something that might be interesting and useful as a kind of starting point. But even though we have these process mining tools, we have never stopped actually drawing the processes that we should be
Hmm.
following, right? Because the reality is messy. It's not kind of something that we can build on safely.
Yep.
And I think it's the same with LLMs and kind of data modeling. It's something that we can use to kind of identify patterns that exist in reality, but it's never going to get us a sort of neat basis on which to keep building safely. I think we need to have people kind of figuring out the sort of ideal to be state in a way. Still, we can't kind of data mine it out of the organization.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting from business processes too. Is an interesting one because there's a business process that the business thinks it's doing, and then
Yeah, then there's the
you
actual one,
see.
yeah.
Well, and I saw somebody on LinkedIn the other day. They said, "Oh, businesses make decisions off of tabular data, right?" And I was like, "That's completely false.
Yep,
Businesses
yep.
make decisions on Slacks, emails, and conversations, usually from their gut. The times I've seen businesses make formal decisions based on tabular data is not that many. So I think this person was an academic or something or whatever. But so I thought that was interesting because I think in a lot of ways the data modeling world is still stuck in this world of rows and columns,
Hmm.
ERP systems and databases. But most of the data in businesses isn't in these systems. You'll see ways of circumventing a lot of these processes just through an email that says, yeah, the system says this, but whatever, I give you the okay to do that, right? And so that's what I mean. Like, I think the LLMs are going to be able to capture, I think, a lot of the nuance that you just aren't able to see right now, because the data that's in your database is there because it's either input by hand or because some application put it there. But that's a small, tiny subset, and it's a neat, tidy subset, as neat as it can be, of your business. And there's the rest of it, sort of this. And then there's Excel, by the way, which also isn't exactly in these systems either, right? So that's just the whole point. It's like, but no, I mean, I was playing devil's advocate with my question. I do think that conceptual modeling and all these things are certainly necessary, and probably more necessary, in fact, because you have so many more data sources. You're just going to have to figure out, like, what's the process that we ideally have? How far are we from it?
One thing that I think, whole thing about different sorts of data being now more and more available, unstructured data and everything, and knowledge graphs and everything, that gives more emphasis to the conceptual level, because the conceptual level doesn't care what the data format is. It doesn't care if it's structured or not. No. It just tells us, how the business actually works. That's it. Whatever, it might be streaming data, it might be videos, it might be, a knowledge graph or something. The conceptual model is still kind of, there, behind it all.
Yep. Yeah, it is. And again, it's still underappreciated. Again, you mentioned conceptual modeling. And maybe we've been going about it wrong, I think, in terms of describing conceptual modeling to the business and to technicians, because it seems very academic, and it feels very sort of ivory tower.
It does. Yeah, it does.
Right.
It does. And we get, all the discussions in data modeling circles about, different ways and methods of doing modeling. I don't follow any method. I just try to find those things and figure out how the things are connected. And I don't really care about notation that much either. I happen to like certain things. Like, I think the crow's feet thing is, pretty kind of good in terms of how much information you can stuck in it without making it too complicated. I just try to figure out what the things are. That's all.
Yeah.
And I know that Steve Hoberman, who was in your podcast as well, which was a very good episode, by the way. Steve is talking now about no longer talking about conceptual and logical. He's talking about, what was it, align and refine. And
align, align, define, refine, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It was. Yeah.
But it was brilliant, though.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's pretty difficult to Google, isn't it?
Align, refine, design, I think it was. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was. Yeah,
one of the, something like that. Yeah, but it was.
I like the idea, because that's what we're doing. We're trying to align that we still, we have an alignment that we understand what the business is about. Even that's the very first step. So obviously we should be doing that. So I call it conceptual data modeling. You might want to call it alignment. Some people call it concept modeling and make a whole lot of fuss about difference between conceptual and concept modeling. I don't know. Or you can call it ontologies and taxonomies and so on and so forth, which are again words that make other people run away screaming.
That's been, I think, one of the things I came into this whole data modeling project is, I think, almost an outsider, right? And I think that early on I caught a lot of flack because I felt like, well, who are you to talk about data modeling? Like you don't know the difference between conceptual and concept modeling. Therefore, I think there's a lot of gatekeeping, and I also feel like there's a lot of pedantic bike shedding that occurs with the data modeling community. And again, no offense to them, I'm probably going to offend a bunch of people saying this, but whatever. But it feels like the data modeling world gets in its own way at the expense of delivering value.
Yep. Yeah. I actually agree. I think that's a tendency that we have. And we are too stuck figuring out even more complex ways of exactly describing information in some sort of a diagram.
Yep.
I think the actual value, I mean, honestly, if you consider, conceptual, logical, physical, or, align, refine, design, how was it again? I think, honestly, my opinion is that the actual value created during that whole process, like 80% of that value is in the very first half an hour when you are starting to do a conceptual model. when you go there and you listen to the business person to explain, they explain that, the truck comes in and the delivery goes here and we refine it and it turns into a product. That's where most of the value is created. Our job as kind of data modelers is basically just to document that so that also the next guy who comes over knows what it's about, and that the data team is able to kind of understand, how that should be converted into something, technical objects and so on and so forth. We try to help with that. But the real value is created in that very first 30 minutes or 45 minutes, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and as you point out too, it's a good opportunity for the business to feel like they're a part of the data project, which is horribly underrated, actually. Like that's the chance for for the data people in the business to connect, because otherwise, again, back to the podcast I did with Gordon Wong, where we talked about most data teams don't deliver value. I completely agree with that. I don't think most data teams do, because they're so disconnected from the business. Business is just gonna, as you say, they're gonna truck comes in, going to get the things out the truck, we're going to go sell them. That's what the business does.
Precisely. And if we can't and this comes kind of down to sort of data product thinking, which I think is another very huge step towards the right direction. If we can't kind of connect the data products we create into what actually happens in the business, then why do those products even exist? What I like about data product thinking is that it's kind of there's a lot of buzzwords and hype around it, but it's still kind of going in the right direction. It's forcing us to think about who uses this and for what purpose. The conceptual modeling, it's kind of the same thing from the other side. When we are designing new things, we're trying to figure, okay, what is this going to be about? How is this going to help people? How does this connect to the actual reality of the business?
Okay, so buzzword, data product. It's everywhere right now. I think it was first used by DJ Patil way back in the day. I can't remember, it was 2012 or something. I can't remember what book. Anyway, it's saying data products is I think sort of the word everyone uses. I've haven't seen consistent definitions of data products. How do you define a data product? What is a data product?
This is again a topic that me and Malcolm we have been talking about. We're doing a series of videos on this, and because it's because we disagree on that. That's why it's fun to make those videos. But I don't know. My definition is I'm sort of a data product maximalist, in the way that I think that if there is a set of data somewhere and a bunch of components that are needed to kind of maintain that set of data, and there are kind of clear boundaries around it, that you can say that, okay, these things are all unique to this same sort of set of data here, and there's someone who owns it and there's someone who uses it, then we can, wrap it and label it as a data product. I think almost anything could be a data product, given that it has someone who actually utilizes it and someone who actually takes care of it in terms of ownership, and that it has like clear boundaries that that, okay, these things belong to my data product and these don't. Not everyone agrees, but
yeah,
I think if we can just kind of force people to think about the actual consumer of that product and think about how to maintain. I mean, like any product. I was the product owner for Ellie for a couple of years. So it's the same thing. We need to figure out how do we make this product even more useful for the actual users. It's not just us pushing data from IT and hoping that someone uses it. We should be thinking, how do we make this actually important? How do we help them achieve their business goals with the help of our product?
Yeah. Is that data that IT pushes to users and dashboards, is that a data product?
It might be if it's kind of managed as a product, and if you actually know that someone is using it. But what point is in a dashboard? Most dashboards are going to be pointless because no one is actually using them for anything sensible. So I would say that one of the kind of defining principles of data products should be that someone actually uses it for something sensible.
Right.
If a product doesn't have actual users, why does it exist? At least it's a very bad product.
It's a very good point. Yeah. I think if you imagine it was a store, right, where you had to change your product, your planograms every 6 months or whatever the frequency is. Yeah. I mean, I'd imagine if you take that analogy, most dashboards would be taken off the shelf, so to speak.
Yeah.
Why do you think it is though that this comes back to that podcast with Gordon, but why do you think it is that we're pumping out dashboards left and right? But yet they're not being used. So why do we keep doing it?
We think we build it and they will come. If we make it, we create a fancy platform. If we build fancy dashboards on top of it, they'll figure it out. We create a good data set and capabilities for ML or whatever, and we say, okay, job done. We have enabled value, but we don't go the last mile. We don't figure out what are the things that the people in the business actually need to know about. What are they looking for? They're not no one is interested in tables. No one is interested in rows or even events usually. They're interested in, the trucks and the deliveries and so on.
But then why it's still with data teams, right? It's and vendors. There's a lot of vendors out there making great dashboarding tools, but nobody uses the dashboards. And then data teams, there's kind of a cargo cult. You mentioned the word cargo cult before. I feel like that's also with kind of the practices that data teams have. So it's almost like it's been ingrained in us. Like we have to get the reports and the dashboards out. And
I think it's about also kind of about confusing output with outcome.
I
think if we create 1,000 dashboards, that means that we've done something valuable. One dashboard is probably a better solution. There was a great post on LinkedIn a few days ago. It was like Benny Clip, also I can't remember who it was, but it was about well-performing data teams, and the point was that the best performing data teams are the ones who focus on the smallest amount of things. If you have 100 people working on 3 things, it's going to be a super valuable data team. If you have those 100 people working on 200 things, it's not going to be a very valuable data team. So it feels kind of unintuitive, but it is that way. I truly believe it is.
What does a perfect data team look like to you?
Well, there's a role that I've kind of started missing, and it's never in a data team. I have never seen a data team properly set up with this, but I would like to have like business analysts. Like the actual people who go there and who figure out how logistics works and they figure out bottlenecks and so on, who figure out these problems to act as an integral part of the data team. I think that's kind of something that I would like to see. And I have huge respect for all sorts of platform engineers and whatnot because they do things that I could never do. But I think there's kind of a gap that, most data teams would really, really need to fill. And I'm not sure what to call them. Occasionally I see information architects now, which is also pretty good, but I think still one step too far from actually figuring out with the business what do they need and how can we help them. That's the thing. So I'm not sure if it's a business analyst, but it used to be at some point that you would have business analysts who were basically just figuring these things out. They would work for, business development unit or something equally vague, but they were trying to figure out what to do better, how to improve. And I think that should be ingrained in data teams as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, again, it's sort of the combo that we had on the podcast a bit ago, but it was like, my role, I don't think I had the word data in it. It was more kind of business related stuff and it works seamlessly because you weren't trying to do like quote data stuff. You're just trying to solve business problems. And so I think that's,
excellent.
Yeah. But you have a lot of these data boot camps these days. So, or courses and curriculum where it's like, here's the data stuff you got to do. You got to go learn Python and Pandas. You got to go learn SQL. So it's all tactics based now, and very few discussions or very few classes are like, let me see how to talk to stakeholders and how to understand what they want and deliver it to them. That's missing from most of these curriculums. So
precisely. So I mean, basic business analysis techniques. And I actually honestly think that data modeling is basically a business analysis technique, especially in the conceptual.
Yeah.
You're figuring out how business works. You could equally well, create a process diagram out of it, and you would be calling yourself a process modeler or something. And Alex Sharp does a lot of work on both because I think he's figured it out like decades ago that these are practically just
He's
different
sharp,
facets
dude.
of the
No
same
pun
thing.
intended. Yep.
Yeah. Totally. But they are just different facets of the same thing. We're trying to figure out how the business actually works, and then we try to utilize that understanding to build something better, be it an operational system or an ML model or a dashboard or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you, if you were to change one thing in the data modeling world, whatever it could be, what would you change?
I think I would get rid of the word data model. Because I think it already at that point we kind of start talking about the wrong thing. We start talking about data, and data is something hard. It's physical. It's objects in a database or in file storage or something, and it immediately gets into that. I don't know. Maybe the align, refine, design thing is a step in the right direction, but it's kind of very difficult to untangle the mess that we got ourselves into.
Yeah. I mean, even with the book I'm working on right now, it's like I actually wanted to not use the term data modeling, but you've had decades of this term being beaten into people. Like, you ain't going to get rid of it anytime soon.
Yeah, totally.
And I always see these LinkedIn discussions like, well, it's knowledge modeling and it's information modeling. Is that you can call it whatever you want. People are going to call it data modeling. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
No,
I do agree though. It is not accurate. It doesn't accurately depict what we're trying to do.
Yeah. I mean, most of what I do is I model the business. I don't model data. Mm-hmm. It's just
business modeling
data that comes out of business. Yeah. But if you start talking about business modeling, then you're suddenly in whole new mess with processes and everything and capabilities. So I don't know, but I think that's kind of the thing. We are sort of focusing on the technical outcomes of the modeling and not the kind of starting point of the business, and it's like we're looking in the wrong direction most of the time.
Oh, it's backwards.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah, I think it said on some podcast, but it's like we start and end with the physical right now. It's literally the opposite of how you would approach it. And then you see what happens. People like you and me are brought in to go fix these problems, so we actually should be really quiet about this and just let people do what they're doing. I think we should. If we're smart, we just shut up. Just say, like, you're doing a great job.
One of the most used questions that I ask in projects is, what does this table actually contain? And I usually get blank stares, like it's data coming from that system. Okay, yeah, but what is it actually about?
How do you get past that discussion gap, though, or that because it feels like you know how to see and translate things into data, but most people can't. So when they look at a table, it's like, I don't know, it's like you say, it's about 10 different systems contributed to this table. I don't know what's in it.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, reverse engineering kind of from actual technical systems back into conceptual level is a fun exercise. It's you're kind of walking backwards, and there are ways to do it. I mean, I often end up looking at the keys and figuring out, okay, the primary key of the table is actually made of those parts, and seems like it's actually kind of a denormalized, extremely denormalized thing containing information about this and that and so on and so forth, and then you kind of try to renormalize it back into something else, and from there try to identify what the business objects are. But it's quite difficult, and especially when the source systems are, source systems do not follow business object logic in most cases. Think of something like SAP. You have tables with 6-letter names that are based on German language abbreviations of something that they thought was a good idea in the 80s. So I mean, it's a great system, of course, but you can't imagine that the source system table will tell you something about the actual business structure, the conceptual model, if you like. So it's a detective work occasionally when you have to walk back.
It's a lot of detective work. Yeah, that's actually a really good point too. I think part of the role of this is being a detective. You know, um, how do you keep pushing yourself with data modeling? How are you staying on top of your learning and your
Well,
skills?
a lot of reading, a lot of talking to people. LinkedIn is actually great if you know who to follow. There's a
Hmm.
lot of people who are talking about things, and
Who do you like
you
to
have
follow?
actually, well, you,
Okay.
of course, yeah. But there's a whole bunch of very interesting people. John is great. John Giles is great. Keith Belanger is great.
Yep.
Kent, of course, Kent Graziano, Veronica Durgin, they are always great, and these sorts of people. And then occasionally, then you end up seeing people write interesting comments on these posts. You start following those people. Eventually, you end
Hmm.
up meeting them in somewhere. That's how it goes. So kind of organically growing kind of a network of people that are very good to follow. And I think I really like what you've done with your practical data modeling community over on
Oh, thank you.
Substack. Was it? That's
Yeah,
really cool, and there's a lot of kind of familiar names there because I've kind of organically ended up following the people who organically end up there as well.
well, that's cool. That's awesome. Yeah, thanks. I mean, that sort of spun out, I would say, by accident. I really wasn't sure. I was trying a different way of writing my book, so I'm writing it in public for the most part,
Yeah.
which is, I guess, in retrospect, kind of ballsy considering the topic. I found that data modeling is a very controversial topic. I didn't realize how religiously contentious this topic is to people, but whatever. But the community is really cool. It's there's a lot of what I found interesting is there's a lot of I think very accomplished people with data modeling in that group who you probably haven't heard of, and also a lot of big names in there. But it might be one of the strongest concentrations of data modeling discussions and people that I've seen anywhere in the world. And it's cool to see that organically because, like I said, I didn't know what I was doing with this. Probably still don't actually. But it's cool to see people coming together for a topic like that. It's so we'll see what happens. The discussions are interesting because we have these group discussions every few weeks, and it almost feels like they're these data therapy sessions. So, so you should
I
definitely show
totally
up for
get it.
that.
But I mean, regarding therapy and how you kind of mentally keep fit with all these modeling problems and so on, I just again today was doing data modeling and was just thinking that this is actually super fun. Figuring out these little boxes and these lines between those boxes, it's super fun. I mean, like I get to do this for a living. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally it's frustrating and so on and so forth, but I like seeing boxes go into places, and I like seeing the structure, the pattern emerge from the kind of chaos. It's super fun. I don't know,
Kind of
maybe I'm
closing
weird
out.
like that.
Yeah, I mean, you're weird like that for sure, but kidding. Nah, you're a good dude. Yeah, kind of closing out. Like, what are you excited about over the next few years?
I am excited about some of the LLM capabilities. Because patterns, uh, getting patterns out of a mess. That's what the LLMs do basically. So if we can use that for help as a helper tool of some kind, I am excited about that. The other thing is that I am quite excited about the kind of new direction that kind of data cataloging is taking with kind of knowledge
Mm,
graphs and data products and so on. So I think with the knowledge graphs, and I'm not the knowledge graph expert. I'm trying to keep track of it, but it's far too complicated for me. But I'm trying to keep track of it because I think that what happens there is actually kind of data models are kind of sneaking into everything through the back
yeah.
door in a way. Data model is a
Hmm.
graph. It's it has nodes and it has edges. It's a graph. It's not the
Yeah.
graph of the actual instances. It's a graph of the object types in a way. But it's a graph like
Hmm.
anything else. So that's going to be very, very interesting. I'm really looking forward to how that develops.
Yeah. Yeah. Same here. Yeah, it definitely feels like the yeah, knowledge graphs started taking the world by storm. It felt like there was always this tribe of graph enthusiasts sort of off in the kind of the woodwork.
Yep.
We know a lot of those people, but it didn't feel like they were really. It felt like they were definitely trying to get their time in the sun, so to speak, and now it's starting to happen. So that's cool to see. I mean, they've always been a very, I think, vocal group, but the rest of the data world's kind of like, yeah, but let's
Yeah,
focus on
but
these
we
big
have our
distributed
tables
systems
here.
here. Yeah, we got our
Yeah.
yeah, that's cool. We got tables. What are you doing? But it's cool seeing. I think the interesting thing that's happening is everything's sort of converging right now, like AI, data, data models, graphs, all this other applications, right? Um, Data products, for example, I guess is sort of the end state of the manifestation of all these things in various shapes and
Yeah,
forms.
yeah,
So
precisely. And the way I see it, conceptual models are behind all of that.
yeah, awesome. It was good chatting with you. How can people find out more about you?
Oh yeah, LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You can track me from there. I have also my little website of my little one man company called Data Core, data KOR.fi. FI of course short for Finland. So my website is up. I think I have links to YouTube videos or whatnot, and even the podcast that we did with you actually at Ellie. So
Oh yeah,
also that sort of stuff there. But yeah, LinkedIn is where I am at. Absolutely, find me and
awesome.
let's chat.
Yeah, and then I guess there's something coming up this fall in
Oh yes.
Helsinki.
Oh
Want to give a
yes.
shout out for that?
Yeah, totally. Helsinki Data Week. Helsinki Data Week is an all new thing, and Joe Rice is going to be there. So next
Hmm.
October, October this year, we're going to do a whole full week of data events in Helsinki, Finland. There's going to be a very, very cool opening event where Joe is going to be. There's going to be a couple of others, Ule Ulsen-Banjo and Vin Vasista is going to be there. There's
Yeah.
going to be cool vendors and consultancies and all sorts of companies presenting stuff and a lot of it's kind of community event really. Or I don't know. It's the first time we've ever done it, so let's see what happens. But it's going to be super cool, I think.
I think it's gonna be awesome. Yeah, it's cool seeing this come together. So
Yeah, and it's kind of also your fault, Joe, because the small group, four of us, four Finns, actually met together last November when you were in Helsinki, and we were all kind of hanging around at the same spots, and then we realized, okay, we could also actually organize something instead of just
yeah,
accidentally coming to hang out in the same spot.
well, it's true. And what I realized with Helsinki is, I've been around the world and seen a lot of data communities and cultures. I think Helsinki's actually got one of the strongest concentrations of data expertise in the world. I would dare say it might be in the top three. Um,
Yeah,
just pound for pound per capita, and not just data practitioners, but I think very solid ones too. Because it's like I don't know what it is about the community there, but or if you all don't talk to each other or do, but I felt like everybody there was very um, skilled in ways that I hadn't seen in other places.
yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, it's going to be
cool.
great. I'm really looking forward for the event in this autumn. HelsinkiDataWeek.fi. That's the website for that. Go and
Okay.
join the newsletter and whatnot. Joe's face is going to be there on
Yeah.
the front page.
Just black it out. It's fine. Well,
Yep.
cool. Well, thanks. It's great chatting with you. So we'll talk to you
Yeah,
later.
likewise.
See
Thank
you,
you.
see you in Helsinki too. All right. Take care.
Oh yeah, totally.